Thank you, Tom. I'm coming from Belgium, so my English language is not perfect. I hope I make myself understand. And then, of course, I'm very honored and thank you for inviting me to address these important topics that will pass during the day, overall the day. So, I think it's very important to notice, and you know it all, that we're living in this kind of turning point. You know, the political and economic rivalry between major powers has intensified, arms race is back, and with it the influence of the military-industrial complex. And this is accompanied by the lack of cooperation on important global challenges we urgently need to address, and undermining more and more of the international order as it has been established after the Second World War, the UN system, and connected to the rise of authoritarian power politics. And last but not least, as Tom mentioned, the role of nuclear weapons has increased once again. And so in this context, and this is what I want to talk about, Europe, NATO, and the militarization, Europe is teetering on the brink of a large-scale confrontation. And things are not going well in Ukraine, where a devastating war has been raging for almost 4 years now, following Russia's invasion. And of course, it started already in 2014, so it's more than 10 years. Russia is targeting civilian targets and infrastructure and attempting to seize more territory by military means in clear violation of the UN Charter. I think it's important to stress that these actions are illegal, irresponsible, and dangerous and must be condemned. But this war cannot be viewed in isolation from NATO's expansionist policies, which Russian leaders have been protesting continuously and unsuccessfully for more than 3 decades. Although NATO repeatedly uses the narrative of an unprovoked Russian invasion, this war could have been avoided if NATO had taken Russia's security interests in account. And so this NATO's provocative behavior and expansion contributed to the current critical moment in what is often referred to as Cold War 2.0. In a Cold War, sorry.
Speak a bit louder as well.
Yeah.
Just for people in the back.
Okay, better like this? Yeah, okay. I'm used to standing in front of classes, and big classes, but maybe not hard enough on. So in a Cold War, superpowers conduct a rivalry through third countries, and that is what is happening in and around Ukraine, where the nationalist conflict took an armed character in 2014 and escalated into a proxy war. And NATO and the European Union encouraged Ukraine to pursue military victory. They supplied billions in weapons and military aid and imposed a taboo on diplomacy for years, with a well-known result. A protracted war that has cost tens of thousands of lives. Now it seems that the military strategy has failed and that Ukraine is in a worse position than ever before, both economically and politically. And I think in the afternoon we can discuss the 28-point peace plan. It's no time now, but that has been tabled by and negotiated by US and Russia. But NATO and the EU repeatedly stated openly the proxy character of the war. And the day before yesterday, Kaja Kallas, EU High Representative, confirmed that the EU, and I quote her, has a very clear 2-point plan. First, weaken Russia. Second, support Ukraine. So they admitted openly. The outcome of this militaristic strategy is that Europe is constantly balancing on the brink of escalation. And contrary to what the propaganda would like to make us believe, Russia has neither the capacity nor the intention to attack NATO. And also this I can address later today, why it is, in figures of troops, military budget, and even quantity and quality of arms. But this position of Russia, conventionally, is precisely what is making it dangerous. Because Russia only has this enormous nuclear capacity to compensate for the conventional military imbalance. And this increases the likelihood of nuclear weapons being employed if it comes to an open military confrontation. So that's why we should avoid that with all means. Nevertheless, propaganda has fueled European fear psychosis to such an extent that people feel forced to sacrifice welfare for warfare policies. And last summer, as you know, Western militarism received a significant boost at the summit in The Hague, when NATO leaders decided to increase their military and military-related expenditures to 5% of GDP in the coming 10 years. And Trump just pulled that 5% target out of thin air, let's say, without any consultation of NATO partners, even before the start of his presidency. And although most European member states, my own government, for example, initially reacted with disbelief and called this new standard absurd or unachievable, they agreed in the summer, so in The Hague, to this new NATO standard, which will more than double NATO's military spending. And this, of course, has nothing to do with security. Trump undoubtedly wanted to serve his own military industry, but also instrumentalize NATO in the hegemonic struggle against rival powers such as China. And this is not new. A part of Trump's brutal authoritarian style and his open attempts to undermine the UN system, it's the continuation of the imperialist nature of US policy as reshaped after the Cold War. And this is the so-called Wolfowitz Doctrine from '92 to prevent, I quote, to prevent, one quote out of it, the reemergence of a new rival either on the territory of the former Soviet Union or elsewhere, as a priority for the United States after the Cold War. So decades later, the concept of strategic rivalry with Russia and China was given a prominent place in NATO's strategic concept. However, Trump's entry into office also caused transatlantic tensions. I cannot address them now, but Europe is realizing that decades of loyalty to its American ally are not paying off, and that it needs to work on what they call strategic autonomy. But the problem is that the European Commission seems to believe that strategic autonomy can be achieved by developing into a military superpower. And much of the military-industrial complex is advocating a transformation openly to a war economy to address what they call the danger of Russian imperialism, even though the military relationship with Russia is already out of balance. So in this spring, Ursula von der Leyen unveiled her 800 billion euro plan called Rearm Europe Readiness 2030. 2030, if you see the roadmap that has been discussed in October, it seems that they see it as the year of possible confrontation with Russia. Under this plan, new member states will allow to spend 1.5% of their gross domestic product on their armies for 4 years without having to comply with European budgetary rules. And for example, my country is under European Commission review, which is called an excessive deficit procedure, which was launched also against other member states with fines as sanction, possible fines as sanction. And it means that Belgium, for example, has 1.5 above the European budget, but we have to decrease that, so it means decrease social spending and increase, without it will be accounted to this norm for military spending. And so, we are caught up in a military, I see over my time, just to conclude, we are in a very dangerous military logic with a large-scale armament plan that is financed by dismantling social protection coupled with the illusion that more weapons will guarantee security against an exaggerated Russian threat. And so peace and capitalism are two concepts that are difficult to combine. Militarism and capitalism go against fundamental values of equality, solidarity, and humanity. Militarization and a new arms race come at the expense of necessary environmental and social investments. Tensions between militarized blocs prevent swift actions to save our planet from climate change, address unsustainable inequality and poverty, and avert the nuclear weapons threat. So what we need is a new security system, and that's why we have to defend it with trade unions, with all social movements, that is people-centered, inclusive, and based on respect for mutual security interests, what is called common security. And we have to emphasize that real security is based on the principle of I am only safe if my neighbor feels safe. Thank you very much.